Namaste, dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, ciao, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10. How are you? I hope you're well. As usual, reporting to you live from Southwest London, talking about all things property. Friday, many of you will know it's my favourite day of the week. Why? Well, number of things really. First of all, anticipation of the weekend, the day we're getting everybody out to view houses, because the most popular day for viewings is, guess what? Yes, you passed the test. It's Saturday. So therefore, today is all about getting all those people that are looking to view out and making sure that if they're viewing houses and we've got something within their price range that suits their needs, that they're viewing through us. Really important to us to make sure that we're ahead of the competition in that regard. Many of you will have heard the very sad news yesterday that interest rates have gone up by another 0.5%. But also, if you're regular watchers, you'd already know that because we told you it was going to happen a long time ago. Hopefully, this is the last of the interest rate rises. We don't yet know that for sure, but it's certainly we're approaching what I think is the peak. It's not financial advice, but it does appear to be the case. Longer term interest rates appear to have come down a bit as well. So there's a lot of competition in the market, which is keeping things not as bad as might be expected. Now, there's a lot of fear, of course, of repossessions. And, just to get some, I wanted to lend you some perspective on this because I think it's important. There's an article there's probably an article in every newspaper today telling how, the doom is impending because scandalous headlines sell newspapers. And therefore, I want to give you the weight of argument towards the other side. So, for instance, it says in the Eye, experts fear the Bank of England's latest interest rate hike could lead to a further rise in home repossessions. True. And then they say that last year, repossessions there was 3,680 repossessions between July and September. And that's up a third on the period from the year before. But let's lend some perspective on that. 3,680. Do you know how many homes there are in the UK that are privately owned? 14.6 million. So the proportion of the population that's getting repossessed, as sad as that is really small. And even if it doubled or trebled, that wouldn't lead to any significant supply hikes in the UK market. So therefore, I don't think that we're in a position where we're going to be oversupplied by repossession. So part of this broadcast is to say, listen, calm down. I know it looks very tough out there. And if you're at the sharp end, very, very tough. A lot of people will tell you that when they were younger, people of my age particularly, I'm sure young people are really fed up of hearing this story. Well, back in the 80s, interest rates hit 15%. That is true. They were 15 or 16% for some borrowers, and it was shocking at the time, and we struggled. But let me tell you, those 15 or 16% rates are the equivalent of the rate today plus. So in other words, young people have it far harder now than we did when we were that age. Obviously, most older people now have equity, smaller mortgages relative to the size of their homes. And so it's not so much of an issue. But for young people, it really is tough. And I remember being in that situation back in the 80s. I can literally remember being in a situation where I was driving to work. I was actually an estate agent at the time. I was manager for a very large corporate agency, as many of you will know. And at that time, I can remember Nigel Lawson actually announcing that we were having to hike interest rates yet again because of our trying to defend our currency because we joined the exchange rate mechanism, which turned out to be a complete disaster. That's another story for another day entirely. But I remember pulling the car over and thinking, wow, this was the first time I'd seen a major recession. This is back in the late 80s. And I didn't know how we were going to tackle that as an agent. What could we do and how would that affect my income? Because, of course, on the one hand, I'd be selling less houses. And at the time, it was just selling. We didn't do rentals at all. And the flip side of that also was that as well as selling less houses, my mortgage rate gone up massively. I'm not suggesting you should shed a tear for me. It's a profession I chose to go into. Wouldn't have it any other way. But it did lead me to a situation where I had to get creative and had to work out what that meant for me and my family and how we could make sure that we still sold houses and we were the ones people were coming to in a much more difficult market. So good estate agents are far more important in a difficult market than in an easy market. Quite frankly, you can go on with any cop it and hop it supplier in a good market. The inquiries come, the properties sell. But in a tougher, tighter market, you need presentation. You need someone to discuss with confidence the benefits of your home, to discuss with confidence the market. And you need people that are strong negotiators to ensure you get the most out of the market. But back then, I can even remember my wife and I, my now wife, then my partner, having just moved into this house with a very large mortgage, thinking, wow, how are we going to afford this? what can we do? How can we cut back and try and make this work for us? And there was a point when I was thinking maybe Middle East, maybe go over to Dubai, maybe sell houses out there because the market's very busy. Last thing I wanted to do, because actually I wanted to get married, I wanted to have a family, and at the time it was a real struggle. So I imagine there's many young people in a similar position now. It will end. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel. We're talking about a shallower recession than some predicted. So although it's going to be tough, and it's going to be tough for some time, there will be an impact across the board. Of course, there'll be higher rates for any borrowers in terms of buy-to-lets, and how that will impact itself depends on whether you're on a fixed rate or not. For many borrowers these days, in fact, the majority, I think, are on fixed rates, so the impact won't be immediate. But as those buy-to-let investors and landlords, rates double, and in many cases they are doubling, sometimes indeed trebling, so they will look to defend themselves by doing one of two things. One, selling the property. Two, increasing the rent. Now, this is very unfortunate for tenants, and it's, you know, an awful shock for them too. So this doesn't just affect homeowners. These interest rate rises, they affect everybody. If you've got credit card debts as well, obviously they're the things that will be impacted most of all, because they're the highest rate of anything else. And what you tend to find is that as interest rate rises happen, so some of those credit providers actually widen the gap between the base rate and the rate they're charging, which is shocking and very poor practice, but it does happen. So we'll wait to see. But just bear in mind, those repossessions are a very, very small part of the whole picture, not as large as some would have you believe. You know, remember, headlines are there to shock and surprise, and it doesn't make them right just because they say certain things are happening. We anticipate that two things will happen. Rents will continue to rise. Unfortunately, it will be the toughest thing for me will be those at the very bottom of the sector, and that's already coming through. Sadly, I read a report, a BBC News report, that said that combined homelessness funded by the GLA has found that the number of first-time rough sleepers on London streets is up 29%. There's 3,570 recorded between October and December, of which 1,700 were sleeping rough for the first time. Now, that's a devastating statistic, and, you know, my heart goes out to those people, and that's something that I think does need to be considered above all other things. Apart from that, on a lighter note, the valuations today, a lot of valuations, got a great auction property coming up for sale as well. We love an auction property. If you're used to the residential market and all of a sudden you're thinking about auctions, there's a thing of beauty about that excitement building towards the day. The fact that when that hammer goes down, even be it a digital hammer, bang, the property sale is made. It's done. It's over. And for those of you that are in the middle of a sale now, that's a revelation when you can be protracted in negotiations and waiting for leasehold information, service charge information, particularly on leasehold properties. You know, coming on to that, some solicitors are now refusing to act on leasehold properties because the amount of time they consume relative to the income they earn is not actually worthwhile. So it just goes to show how much tougher it's got to get through all the leasehold information. Certainly a struggle for many vendors and many buyers as well. As far as the freehold market is concerned, what we expect to happen is lower volumes. That's the likely outcome this year. We'll still have the sad bits, death, debt, and, you know, they're always there, and divorce, of course. Those three things will always be happening. Aside from that, there'll be those of you thinking, should I move now? Is it a good time to move now? And that depends on your circumstance and your situation. If you're not sure, give me a call. Let's chat it through. You know, invite me round. There's no obligation attached to these valuations anyway. But sometimes, just because interest rates are high, some might be thinking it's not the right time to move. And in many cases, it's neutral anyway. If you've got cash in your property and you're looking to move that to another area, whether you earn a bit more or a bit less, move is sideways, then it actually makes no difference, does it? You know, if your property price has fallen by 5% in London and property prices have fallen 5% where you're going to, then yes, you'll be moving a smaller pot of money, you'll be selling for less, but guess what? You're buying for less. The move is neutral. The same could be said if it's moving up or it's staying the same. So the point is not to try and call the market. For most of us that are not at the very top of the affordability scale, where is it, you know, viable for us to move, most of somewhere in the middle, then those moves can happen for you. And sometimes it's better to move now rather than hang on for what might be the perfect market. Because what's perfect? Guess what? When your house is more popular, the house that you're going to buy is more popular. It doesn't make it any easier. It makes the sale easier, but the purchase harder. So it balances out in the end. So if you're thinking of moving and you're wondering what to do about it, give us a call. Let's have a chat through, maybe come around, give you a valuation. And if you just want more information, then, you know, we're here for you. We've always got your back when it comes to buying and selling, whether you're here in Southwest London or elsewhere, or you're looking to auction a property, because we love our auctions and would love to help you with that too. So thanks very much for watching as always. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. We certainly will. And we'll be back on Monday. Until then, look after yourselves. And if you can, your family and friends. Ciao.